There was a strange smell coming from the washing machine, like vanilla, but not the kind we use. I stood there, staring at the slow spin cycle, and listened to the way my heart tapped inside my ribs. Not pounding, just tapping, like it was trying to get my attention. The shirt I found crumpled at the bottom of the laundry basket wasn't mine. It was a man's, bigger than anything I wear, the fabric softer, worn at the collar like someone's favorite. Pale blue. No tag. No explanation. I washed it anyway. I folded it neatly and placed it back into the basket. Not because I'm stupid. Not because I'm calm. But because I've learned it's better to move gently through moments like this, as if you're walking across thin ice. One wrong move, and it all breaks. She came home 3 hours later, humming. Her keys hit the dish by the door. She kicked her shoes off without looking up, and she didn't ask why I was still awake. She just said, "Not tonight." That was it. No hello. No eye contact. Just those 2 words, tossed over her shoulder like I was a passing stranger on the street. I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, but because the version of me that used to speak had gone quiet weeks ago. She left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. Screen up. At exactly 11:42 p.m., it lit up with a message. "You forgot your shirt. I'll bring it Friday. Same time." From a contact named K. I stared at the screen long enough to memorize every pixel. Then I picked up Max's leash. The dog was already sitting by the door like he knew something wasn't right, and walked outside into the cold. The house behind me glowed in warm yellow light. Inside, my wife was brushing her teeth. The same mouth that said "not tonight" had told someone else Friday, same time. I walked past our neighbor's porch lights, past the mailbox, past every house on our block. I didn't stop until Max tugged me back. The leash, taut in my hand, was the only thing reminding me I still existed. Tomorrow, I would find out what else she forgot. Tomorrow, I would whisper something she'd never expect. But tonight? Tonight, I counted each breath like a currency I could no longer afford to spend on her. I didn't sleep. I laid in bed with my eyes open, listening to the occasional creak of the ceiling fan above us, turning like it always had, steady, predictable, unlike her. She curled up on the edge of the bed, back turned to me, phone face down on the charger. I stared at her silhouette in the dark. The outline of the woman I married still looked the same, but there was a new emptiness in the shape. By 5 a.m., I was back in the kitchen, slowly rotating the same mug of coffee in my hands. The screen on her phone still hadn't lit up, but I couldn't stop thinking about that message. "You forgot your shirt. I'll bring it Friday. Same time." I opened the calendar on my phone. Friday. Just 2 days from now. She had already blocked off the evening with the usual excuse, mandatory team shift. Night unit short. I stared at that lie like it had teeth. Max sat by the door again, alert. He always knew. Dogs feel things before we admit them. His ears were twitching. I think he was waiting for me to get honest, with myself, with her, with everything. By the time she woke up, I was in the garage, organizing tools I hadn't touched in months. She came out with sleep in her eyes and fake concern in her voice. "You're up early." I didn't look at her. I just nodded. "You okay?" Again, I nodded. I didn't have the strength to lie, but I didn't have the courage to start the war either. She lingered like she was expecting a hug. She didn't get one. She left for work 20 minutes later. I watched her from the window. Her car pulled out of the driveway. Same direction as always. But I knew, deep in the pit of my stomach, she wasn't driving to the hospital. I spent the rest of the morning trying to guess who Kay was. I scrolled through our shared Facebook friends. Nothing. No Kay. In recent messages. No Catherines or Kevins or Kristens that stood out. Just silence. Digital and emotional. Around noon, I drove to the parking garage near her hospital. Parked on the 5th floor and waited. Her shift was supposedly from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., but I watched as she turned down a different road halfway to work. I followed. She didn't see me. I stayed several cars back, letting distance be my shield. She pulled into a strip mall on Old Mill Road. It was the kind of place where things were meant to stay hidden. Nail salons, dry cleaners, a martial arts studio with paper covering the windows. She walked toward the end unit. No sign. No lights. Just a tinted glass door that opened from the inside. She went in. 10 minutes later, a man walked out the back. Bald. Tall. Athletic. Wearing a gym bag slung over one shoulder and texting with one hand. He was wearing a red wristband. The kind she had in the bathroom drawer, next to her used wedding ring. I drove home. I didn't want to see anything else. Not yet. I knew if I stayed, I'd lose the ability to keep pretending. and pretending was the only thing keeping me functional. That evening, she came home with grocery bags and told me she was starving from the double shift. I watched her unload items we never eat. Cereal she doesn't like. Almond milk she's never touched. Protein bars with packaging that looked unfamiliar. She was building someone else's pantry. A life that didn't include me. I nodded through her story, laughed at the right parts, said, "Wow," when she told me about the emergency patient who bit a nurse. I wondered if she realized how far my voice had drifted from sincerity. Or maybe she did, and didn't care. She put the bags away and reached into the cabinet for a wine glass. Poured one, just for herself. Then, as casually as anything, she said, "Friday's gonna be a long one again. Night unit's chaos. I might crash at Yara's if it runs late." I watched the glass tip toward her lips. Red stained the rim, and something inside me folded. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Okay." No tone, no judgment. Just the kind of, "Okay," you say when you're watching a movie you've already seen and know exactly how it ends. She smiled, satisfied with the lie. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly expect, is that I wouldn't be here when she got back. Not Saturday. Not ever. And Friday? Friday I'd be watching again. But this time, I wouldn't just be a shadow. I didn't pack a bag. That would have made it real. That would have meant I'd made up my mind. But I did empty out the drawer where I kept my socks, the one she never noticed, never used. I pulled out the receipts I'd been collecting, the ones she tossed in her purse and forgot about. One from a restaurant I didn't recognize, timestamped 10:12 p.m. on a Thursday she claimed she was working. Another from a gas station 30 miles north. Her card. Her signature. I laid them out on the kitchen table and stared at them like they might rearrange themselves into something less humiliating. But they didn't. They stayed as loud and damning as they'd been the moment they were printed. I didn't tell anyone. Not a single friend. Not my brother. Not my mom. Because saying it out loud would turn me from a husband into a man who'd been replaced. And I didn't know how to wear that yet. Friday came like a slow drumbeat. Everything felt off, the way my shoes squeaked louder on the hardwood, how the dog wouldn't eat, how the refrigerator made a faint hissing sound like it was holding its breath. Ren left the house at 6:04 p.m. wearing jeans too tight for work and lipstick in a shade I hadn't seen since our second anniversary. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "I'll text if I stay at Yara's." I smiled. Not because I believed her, but because she expected me to. 15 minutes later, I was in the car again. No GPS. I didn't need one. My gut knew exactly where to go. She didn't drive to the hospital. She took the exact same turn down Old Mill Road, past the strip mall, and kept going this time. A left onto a narrow street that led to a row of rental townhomes. The kind people don't brag about but keep secret, not because they're ashamed of where they are, but because they're ashamed of why. She parked in front of Unit 107. No lights were on. She didn't knock. She just entered using a code on the door keypad, like she'd done it dozens of times. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I drove around the block and parked across from the playground behind the building. I watched as shadows moved through the window, two of them. His was larger. He was shirtless within minutes. I don't know why I stayed. There was nothing noble in it. Just paralysis. My hands refused to turn the key. My legs refused to get out and walk away. So I sat there, jaw clenched, throat tight, feeling every ounce of shame swirl like acid in my stomach. At 9:43 p.m., the front door opened. He stepped outside, barefoot, holding a small bag, the blue one. The one from the text. He tossed it into the trunk of her car like it belonged there. She followed moments later, hair messy, hoodie zipped halfway, eyes glowing. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months. She looked like she belonged there. They laughed about something. Something I'll never hear. Something I wouldn't understand even if I did. And then, the part that broke me in a way I didn't expect, she leaned into him and said something so softly I couldn't hear, but he smiled in that way people do when they've been chosen. Then they kissed. Not fast. Not stolen. The kind of kiss that has history in it. Like they were home. Like I'd been an Airbnb she'd finally checked out of. She got in the car and drove away. He went back inside, slow, casual, without a care in the world. I followed her, not because I had a plan, but because I wanted to see what lies she'd tell me to my face. But she never came home. She stayed at Yara's, just like she said. Except Yara had posted 3 minutes earlier on Instagram from Nashville, her sister's bachelorette weekend. I saw the balloons in the background. Ren had liked the post. I stood in our kitchen, alone, still, empty. I wanted to scream, to smash something. to burn everything she touched. But all I did was whisper the same word I had rehearsed for days. Goodbye. This time, it wasn't practice. When Ren finally walked through the door late Saturday morning, I was sitting in the living room, staring at nothing. I hadn't moved in hours. I hadn't slept either, not because I couldn't, but because sleep felt like a luxury reserved for people not unraveling quietly in the house they used to feel safe in. She looked at me like I was furniture. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. She wore the same hoodie from the night before, the red one she once called ugly. And that familiar scent hit me again, cologne. But not mine. She set her keys down and yawned. You're up early. I didn't sleep. She froze. Just for a moment. Then kept walking. Rough night? I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask who Kay was. I wanted to ask about the townhome. The kiss. The blue bag. But instead, I said, Max threw up in the hallway. Oh. Poor guy, she said, not bothering to look. She went into the bathroom and shut the door. I heard the shower start within seconds. That used to be our Saturday ritual, sleeping in, coffee, breakfast together. Now, I was background noise to a different life she'd already chosen. I waited. When she came out, dressed in fresh clothes and scrolling her phone, I asked, Did you have fun last night? She didn't even flinch. Yeah, we had wine and watched that dumb movie with the talking raccoon. Yaris. Yep. She didn't look up. She's in Nashville. She blinked, once too slow. What? Yara. She's at her sister's bachelorette. She posted about it. For a split second, she hesitated, like a buffering video. Then she said, Oh. I meant I was with Jenna. I get their places mixed up. You don't mix up a person's home. You don't lie like that unless you're used to doing it. I nodded, slow. Of course. That was all I said. I didn't accuse her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just let the silence do the work. She started to get twitchy. She asked if I was hungry, if I wanted eggs, if I'd seen her gray hoodie. I answered with small words. The kind people use at gas stations or drive-thrus. Impersonal. Brief. By evening, she was pacing. She asked if we were okay. I said, I think we're somewhere else now. She asked what I meant. I looked at her. Really looked. I think you've already left. You just haven't packed yet. She laughed. The kind of laugh people do when they're scared of being caught but not ready to confess. Ellis, you're spiraling again. That word. Again. Like the last time I had suspicions. Like the time I found receipts. Like the time she told me I read too much into things. Spiral. That's what she calls my pain. I stood and walked into the bedroom. Not because I couldn't bear to hear more, but because I already knew everything I needed to know. That night, I set the alarm for 3 a.m. Not to wake up, just to check if I was still there. Still breathing. Still in that house, in that life, under that roof. I didn't pack a bag, but I made a list. A quiet one, in my head. Things I would take. Max. My headphones. My dignity, what little was left. Things I would leave. The red hoodie. The ring. Her stories. At 3:03 a.m., I sat on the porch and watched fog roll across the front yard. Max sat beside me. I whispered to him, This isn't our home anymore. He leaned against me like he understood. Sunday would be the last morning she'd find me in this house. But I wouldn't tell her. She didn't deserve the warning. The morning light was cruel, too bright, too warm for the kind of cold I carried inside. I stood by the bedroom window, staring at the driveway, watching shadows move across the hood of my car. I hadn't said a word to Ren in almost 16 hours. She hadn't asked why. That silence told me everything I needed to know. She had moved on from needing my voice. And I had stopped needing her lies. I made coffee, fed Max, skipped breakfast. I deleted old voicemails, her birthday messages, her on my way home calls, and tossed the phone into the kitchen drawer like it was infected. Ren didn't come downstairs until almost noon. Her voice was light, fake. You didn't wake me? I didn't see the point, I said. She raised an eyebrow, then laughed nervously, like I was making a bad joke. Are we doing this again? I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the dry cleaning bag from the hallway. It had a shirt in it. One I'd never seen before. Not mine. Not her style. It still had a receipt stapled to it. I handed it to her. She froze. What is this? I said, You tell me. She opened her mouth, but the lie didn't come fast enough this time. Her delay was the answer. I turned away. Not in anger, not in victory, just in surrender. I had spent months begging reality to be different. But reality doesn't bargain. She didn't chase after me. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just sat down on the stairs and rested her head in her hands, like the weight of being caught was heavier than the weight of what she'd done. And still, I pitied her. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't slam doors. I did what she would least expect. I cleaned. I scrubbed the bathroom tiles. I vacuumed the guest room. I put clean sheets on the couch. I left her favorite mug in the dishwasher, face up. And then, without telling her why, I took Max and got in the car. I didn't drive far. Just to the lake where we used to take him when things were better, back when we held hands and talked about names for the kids we never had. I sat on a bench and pulled out my notebook. Not the kind with passwords or plans. The other one. The one I hadn't touched in years. The one where I used to write her poems. Pages and pages of them, inked with affection I didn't know I could run out of. I ripped each one out, fed them to the lake. One by one. Slow. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like burning down a house after you've already frozen inside it. Around 3 p.m., I got a call. From a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. Then a voicemail. A man's voice. Ellis. Hey. I don't know how to say this. I thought she told you. I'm sorry. She said she was leaving you. I never wanted to be part of a lie. I listened to it twice. She said she was leaving me, but she was still there. Still in our house. Still brushing her hair in our mirror. Still sipping wine on our couch like nothing was breaking. Maybe, in her mind, she had already left. Maybe she thought I'd just vanish on my own. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't call her. I didn't storm back into the house. Instead, I waited for dusk, then quietly returned and left an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside it were keys, a photo of us from Maine, and one sentence written on the back. You told him first. That's how I knew you were never going to tell me. Then I took Max, got in the car again, and drove west. No map. No luggage. Just freedom disguised as silence. She would wake up the next morning thinking I was still upstairs. She'd learned soon enough. I wasn't. The first night away from the house, I parked at a rest stop an hour past the state line. Max curled up in the back seat, his head resting on a pillow from our old guest room. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Not because I missed her, that part was numb, but because every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing that man's voicemail. She said she was leaving you. The thing is, she hadn't. She never said it to me. Not once. Not even in a whisper. She'd lied with smiles, with silences, with bedtime kisses that meant nothing. She wasn't planning to leave me. She was planning for me to disappear quietly, like a stain that fades on its own. By morning, I had no real plan. I drove aimlessly through small towns, past diners and church signs, billboards for law offices and water parks. I checked into a roadside motel that didn't ask questions. The air smelled like mildew and burnt coffee, but it was quiet. I thought I was free. Until I opened my email. It was routine, just checking for a receipt from the gas station. But instead, I found a new message. Subject line. Hey, you left this behind. It was from her. No, hi. No, Ellis. No, are you okay? Just a single line and one attachment. A photo of my old leather journal, the one I kept hidden under the mattress. She had found it. Opened it. Read it. The photo showed the cover peeled back, pages warped from years of thumbprints and sweat. And there was something sitting on top of it in the picture, her wedding ring. No caption. Just that. I stared at the screen, unsure if it was a message or a punishment. Had she finally realized what she'd done? Or was this her way of saying, I win? 2 hours later, another message came in, this time from a different address. No name. No signature. Just a screenshot. It was a post from some private Facebook group, one I didn't belong to. A community for people in complicated relationships, apparently. There she was. Ren. A blurry selfie in the passenger seat of a car, not ours. Her caption. Finally moving forward. Blackheart, it's messy, but it's mine. The comments underneath were full of celebration. People cheering her on, telling her she was brave. One of them wrote, he'll be fine. You deserve your story too. And I sat there, in that sticky motel room with peeling wallpaper, wondering if I had ever been anything more than a prologue. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But I started to feel something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in weeks. Anger. Not the violent kind. Not the yelling kind. The quiet kind. The kind that makes your hands shake while tying your shoes. The kind that comes when someone rewrites your life like they owned the narrative all along. She had erased me from her story before I even stepped away. And now, she was branding herself as the victim. The strong one. The woman brave enough to leave the man who had already left her emotionally. Except I hadn't. I was still there every night, trying to reach her through dinner plans, small talk, playlists from our first road trip. She just hadn't listened. But someone else had. Because that same evening, I got a text from a number I didn't know. No name. Just a message. You don't know me, but I know her. And you deserve to know everything. My chest locked up. My hands hovered over the screen. I replied, "Who are you?" Their response came fast. "I'm the one who walked away before you. Meet me tomorrow. Please. This isn't just about you anymore." I didn't sleep that night either. Not because I didn't want to, I was exhausted, but because that message stayed lit in my brain like a blinking warning light on a dashboard you keep ignoring. I'm the one who walked away before you. Meet me tomorrow. Please. I kept wondering what kind of man sends that to a stranger. And more than that, I wondered what kind of woman creates multiple versions of herself that no one ever compares, because none of us ever thought to talk. By morning, the message had replayed in my head 1,000 times. Max sensed it. He kept shifting around, pacing the room, glancing at me like I'd say something that would make it all okay again. The man gave me a location. Quiet cafe. North side of a town I'd never been to. I almost didn't go. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, convincing myself this was stupid, that I didn't need answers from someone else. But the truth was, I'd run out of questions I could ask her. And that's what scared me most, that my curiosity about my own marriage had reached its end. I walked in. The place smelled like cinnamon and bleach. Midday crowd. Soft jazz playing. And there he was. Khaki jacket, thick glasses, older than me by maybe a decade. Hands folded like he was preparing for a confession. He looked like the kind of guy who wrote poetry and never showed it to anyone. He stood when I walked up. "Ellis." I nodded. He motioned to the seat across from him. I sat down slowly, not sure what to expect. "I'm Micah," he said. "I was with her. Years ago. Before she married you." I stared. Not because I was surprised she had a past, but because of how familiar his eyes looked. Not physically. Emotionally. He had the same look I'd been carrying for months. He told me everything. That Ren had lived in his city after college. That she moved in with him after 6 weeks. That it was magic at first. That she told him no one had ever made her feel the way he did. Then one night, she didn't come home. 3 days later, she walked through the door with a story about her sister's emergency. But Micah already knew, because she'd left her email open. Same pattern, he said, sipping his coffee like it was medicine. 2 guys. One saved under a fake name. The other labeled by an emoji. And me, the one who folded her laundry while she texted someone else in the next room. My skin went cold. He told me how she made him feel small. Questioned his memory. Doubted his gut. He said it started with distance. Then gaslighting. Then full detachment. She left the relationship months before she moved out, he said. By the time I caught on, I was already grieving someone who was still brushing her teeth in my bathroom. I felt like I was talking to myself from a parallel life. Then Micah handed me something, a folded piece of paper. He said he'd debated for years whether to keep it or burn it. It was a list. A list of names. Men. Cities. Dates. Not all of them recent. But some overlapped with the time I was dating her. Even while we were engaged. I recognized 2 names. One of them was the man who left me that voicemail. I said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "Why are you showing me this now?" Micah looked me straight in the eyes. "Because I saw your name tagged in one of her photos. I wanted to believe she'd changed. I saw the wedding album. The dog. The house. I told myself maybe she found peace. But then I got the same message." He pulled out his phone. A screenshot. From Ren. Sent 2 weeks ago. "It's different now. I just need to find a way to end it gently. He's fragile. I don't want him to spiral again." I froze. Spiral. Again. That word. That poison she used to discredit the pain she caused. Micah leaned forward. "She's rewriting your story before you even leave it. That's why I called. So you'd know you're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not broken." I nodded, but I didn't feel reassured. I felt something darker, the kind of grief that only shows up when you realize your memories are counterfeit. We parted without a handshake. There was nothing else to say. I drove for hours after that, letting the highway pull me forward while the past chased behind. Back at the motel, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to no one. She was already burying me, while I was still trying to save her. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just shut my eyes and promised myself one thing. Tomorrow, I'll leave for real. This time, she'll look around and realize. I'm not just gone. I'm no longer traceable. The room was still dark when I woke, but I knew what day it was. The quiet kind, the kind that follows decision, not doubt. The motel's heater hummed in the background. Max was curled up at the foot of the bed, watching me like he already knew what came next. I didn't rush. I took a long shower, folded every piece of clothing I'd brought, and left a tip on the dresser. It felt strange, showing respect to a place that held my grief more gently than my own home had. Then I drove. No destination, just away. Not from her, exactly. From the version of me that stayed. Around noon, I found a small town with a bookstore that sold used paperbacks for $1. I bought one, a weathered copy of The Old Man and the Sea. The cashier smiled and asked if I wanted it gift-wrapped. I said yes. I didn't know why. I found a park bench near a fountain, the kind of place people take deep breaths. I opened the book, found a blank page near the back, and wrote something I never thought I'd be able to say with sincerity. You don't have to forgive her. Just forgive yourself for staying as long as you did. Then I tucked the book into a little free library outside the local post office and kept walking. Someone would find it someday. Maybe someone who needed it more than I ever did. Later that day, I checked my phone. One message. From Rin. Just 2 words. Where are you? I didn't reply. There was no need to explain peace to someone who mistook silence for weakness. Instead, I took a photo of the lake I'd found near the edge of town. Max standing by the water. No filters. No captions. Just stillness. And I realized something. I didn't want to hate her anymore. Hatred was just another kind of tether. And I'd cut all the strings. That night, I booked a small cabin for a week. A place with no Wi-Fi, no TV, just firewood and quiet. I wrote in a new notebook. This time not about her. Not about us. Just about me. What I liked. What I missed. What I still wanted to believe in. 3 days later, I met a woman at the farmer's market. Her name was Cora. She sold honey and didn't ask why I looked like I hadn't spoken in days. She talked gently, laughed loudly. She let Max lick her hand. We didn't exchange numbers. We just smiled and said maybe we'd see each other again next week. It was the first time in months I didn't think about what Rin was doing. The first time I didn't flinch when someone asked how I was. The first time I believed that healing wasn't something I had to chase, just something I had to stop running from. Back home, or what used to be home, she probably walked in and saw my drawer empty. The leash missing. The photo gone. The ring left where she'd left hers. And I imagined she stood in that silence, expecting me to come back. But I wouldn't. Because the truth was, I hadn't left her out of anger. I left her because I was ready to find out who I was without her. And now, for the first time in years, I like who I'm becoming.